Half of the Action Network Power Hour, getting into the divisional round of the playoffs in the NFL this weekend. Stick around, latter half of the show. We got the touchdown, latter half of the hour. We got the touchdown show with Nick Giffen and Gilles Gallant. But first, our Action Network expert panel is going to break down all 4 divisional round games. Sean Koerner, Simon Hunter, Chris Raybon. Later in the show, Darren Rovell, he's going to give us the market updates for each and every game. We got a touchdown, anytime touchdown poll to wrap it all up before we kick to the touchdown show. Everything we're talking about, all the picks, all the data, all the research available for free in the award-winning Action Network app. As I said, we are presented by bet365, the world's favorite sportsbook brand. Sign up with promo code ACTION to get Bet365's exclusive sign-up offer in New Jersey and Colorado and Ohio. Bet $1 on any game, get $200 free. Let's get it started. Jags and Chiefs, the first game up. Sean Koerner, give us your best bet for the game.
So I'm going with Trevor Lawrence over 252.5 passing yards. And, you know, the Jaguars have made it a habit now to get off to a slow start. They rank 23rd in first half point differential, but they rank 4th in second half point differential. And that should be the case again this week. They face a Chiefs team that's coming off a bye week, should be able to get off to a fast start and force the Jags into a pass-heavy game script. And that's reflected in Lawrence's pass attempt prop here. It's all the way up to 38.5 right now. He's attempted 33 or more passes in 9 games this year, and he's sailed past this number in all 9 of those games. And I'm not too worried about this matchup. The Chiefs rank 20th in DVA against the pass, and their numbers look much better in the second half. But when you consider the QBs they've faced, it's less impressive. They've faced Malik Willis, Bryce Perkins, Davis Mills, Russell Wilson twice, and Jared Stidham. So I think their second half numbers are very misleading. So I think Lawrence clears this pretty easily here. And I'm projecting him closer to 260.5.
260.5. All right. It's been interesting to see. There's been such a theme with a lot of these teams and a lot of these games. The quarterbacks that a lot of these teams that look really impressive have played in the second half of the year. Another good point with who the Chiefs have faced. Simon, give me your best bet.
Chad, I easily could have cheated for convincing me. I just gone with the under. Chad loves the under this week. Could have just been a shoe-in pick. Just took the under. Chad would have picked me, but we'll grind it out like we always do. We'll go with the dog, the road dog, and the Jaguars. +9, +9.5 at some books now. Just a great number. We love this matchup for so many different reasons, but we knew this number was just going to be simply inflated just because the public was going to bet so heavily on the Chiefs money line, teasers, everything, and just get a free couple of points here. Now, did I see it get up to 9.5? No, I think that's pretty crazy. It's already touched 9.5 at a lot of books. But to me, this is a matchup that we knew coming in, we were going to take this. We've just seen the Chiefs this season as a big touchdown favorite. They just don't cover. And usually these games are way closer than they want to be because their defense is so young. So looking at this matchup of Doug Peterson in the playoffs, we know the record. He's 6-0 as a dog. And the one loss came with a really late pick in the 2-minute drill for that Eagles team with Nick Foles. So the fact that we know that Doug can coach so well with not that great a talent at the quarterback position, we've seen what he's done with Trevor Lawrence this season. I mean, they've really grown every week since the midway point of the season. It feels like they've grown every week, offensively, defensively. And this is just the ideal matchup for them. They're going against a team that, yes, they can move the ball at will. We know that, Kansas City, but they can give up a lot of yards, especially defensively. Their secondary is just very young. So looking at this matchup, the fact that we're getting 8.5, 9 points with this Jags team, Chad, it felt like me and you were going to be on this regardless. But all the trends point to this being a good time to take the Jags as well. The Chiefs, they're 2-11 against the AFC teams in their last 13 against the spread. They've just struggled in their conference against these teams because they get such big spreads. So to me, we'll take the free points. We'll let the public bounce this up to 9.5, and we'll just grab the value where it's at.
Yeah, I woke up this morning and saw that this game had moved from 9 to 9.5, and I was shocked. And anyone can see this in the Action Network app. I bet it at 9.5, and I had bet it at 8.5. I just can't believe this game got to 9.5. Now I'm annoyed because it might get to 10, and I'm going to be like, why don't I just have a little bit more patience? But I don't know. Let's see what Raybon's got. Let's see if Raybon can top what is probably the leader in the clubhouse right now, and the Jags +9.5.
Yeah, I mean, I'm usually annoyed for a different reason. I'm usually annoyed because I'm getting so much closing line value that half of these bets we give out are useless by the time we go on air. But to each his own, we're going to go with Travis Etienne over 18.5 receiving yards against these Kansas City Chiefs. And Etienne played 86% of the pass snaps in his playoff debut. JaMychal Hasty, the backup running back, was a non-factor. And while he had just 12 receiving yards in that game, he did face a Chargers defense that was allowing the sixth fewest schedule adjusted yards receiving to running backs. But now he faces this Kansas City defense that allows the third most schedule adjusted receiving yards per game to opposing running backs. And while I do take Sean's point that they have played a pretty light slate of quarterbacks, I do think they have made some schematic changes at cornerback, swapping McDuffie, swapping Snead, and just McDuffie coming back. I think it's going to be harder to get separation with Kirk and Zay Jones in this spot. So I think that's even more dump offs to a running back like Etienne, who, by the way, did have 28 yards in that matchup in week 10. So I'm projecting 25 here. So still a good bit of value on this over for me.
Yeah, what I loved this week, Raybon.
And shout out to Stuckey. So yeah, shout out to Stuckey. Yeah, he unearthed this first. If you listen to the Action Network pod, you would have heard me in real time.
Can I give Stuckey credit? Can you give me my one line, please?
Okay,
listen to the Action Network podcast with Raybon and Stuckey. And Stuckey loved this, and you got so excited about it. I was surprised that you didn't jump on this earlier in the podcast last week. So, God, that's a really interesting one too. And I think I also saw a stat, something like Etienne was on the field for a ridiculous amount of offensive plays. I'm not even going to throw the number out because then Raybon's going to tell me, well, that's a number that's lower than what I just gave you. So I'm not even going to bother with that, but that's a good one. But guys, come on. Jags plus 9.5. We all know that the Chiefs have a really hard time covering big numbers at home, that Patrick Mahomes has a hard time covering big numbers generally. All the trends back up the idea that you should be playing the Jags at 9.5. I was a little nervous playing them at 8.5, 9.5. Fellas, nothing's gonna walk me off of that. Simon thinks he was playing nice by not taking the under. He was still playing dirty because the Jags plus 9.5. That's going to be the play. Darren Rovell, what do you got?
All right. Well, I'm here to start off with props and to tell you that Chris Raybon is the squarest square of them all in the props today. Although that number is now 19.5, the most popular prop is Travis Etienne over 19.5 receiving yards, Dallas Goedert over 49.5 receiving yards, and the one that we see all the time, of course, no number is good enough for the public. Travis Kelce over 79.5 receiving yards. All right. As you said, it's Chiefs minus 9.5. And even at that, they are getting 61% of the bets and 75% of the money, despite all the trends. I mean, this is like people can't get enough of the over, no matter what number it is on Patrick Mahomes, even though the last 2 years, that has not been a great play. 53 is the total. 52% of bets, 57% of the money on the over. Chad?
That makes no sense to me. It feels like any of those people who are making those bets have not spent 1 millisecond watching Convince Me, spending time in the Action Network app, talking about or listening to anything that we talk about all season long. You just got to play the under in the plus 9.5. I'm going on a limb here. I know it, but you can see in the app, I am like so over invested in those two bets. It's freaking ridiculous. All right, let's get.
Listen, wait. My bet of the day. I know I'm not an analyst here, but my bet of the day is Chiefs under 30.5 total.
All right. Well, thanks for adding that. Eagles Giants. That is the next game up. Koerner, kick us off.
I've got a gross one for you here. I got Daniel Bellinger under 22.5 receiving yards. In weeks 15 through 17, he averaged a 96% routes run rate, which was the most among all tight ends. And he was still only able to average 24 yards. And last week, his routes run rate fell all the way down to 82%. And that's because the Giants decided to give Thanksgiving Day legend Lawrence Cager more run. His routes run rate went all the way up to 30%. He's a former receiver, so I think they just want to get more pop in the passing game by having him play a little bit more. So as a result, Bellinger only caught 2 passes for 17 yards. That's sort of the production we can expect from him with this type of usage. So it's going to be tougher for him to clear 22.5 with that big of a decrease in playing time, especially against an Eagles defense that's been pretty solid against tight ends this year. They rank 6th in DVOA. And Bellinger has caught 91% of his targets this year. That is unsustainable, even if he continues to just run 4.1 yards downfield. So I'm projecting his median closer to 19.5, but I think there's a lot of downside in this market.
You mentioned Lawrence Cager as a Thanksgiving Day legend. Obviously, for regular viewers of Convince Me, they know that Koerner gave out Cager as his best prop on Thanksgiving, and the guy cleared it on the first play of the game, or early in the game on his first catch of the game. First play of the game,
and then did absolutely nothing after
and then
that.
did nothing the rest of the game. So that's the reference there, Daniel Bellinger. That is Raybon-esque grossness right there. Koerner. Simon, what do you got?
I'm going with the Eagles -7.5. It's a game we need to debate it all week. We've just been begging them to give us the 7, and they won't do it. Despite all the tickets, all the money pouring on the Giants, we're seeing some books get up to 8 now. So if anyone out there could still get the 7.5, I'd just grab it now. I don't think it's going to drop to 7 like I thought it was going to today. I just don't see it moving there. It seems like the books are taking a stand, and I think we're going to take a stand with them, Chad. It's one of those things. To know your enemy, you must study your enemy. And our enemy today, they're on the Eagles, and we're going to ride with them here. I just think it's a spot of the Giants have taken major steps. It's clearly an overreaction to them beating up a horrible Vikings defense. Again, Daniel Jones has played really well this season. Is he a top 5 passer in this league, Chad, with that wide receiving core? No. I just think the Vikings will make any guy look that way. So coming off such a big game, we saw this number probably should be 9, closer to 10. But just because they played so well, and the Eagles have not covered now, I think in 4 straight games, the public is just off of them. They are absolutely off this Eagles team. So to me, we're getting a free point and a half here on this Eagles team. And it's going across key numbers here. 8.5, 8, 7.5, all key numbers. So to me, looking at this matchup, you expect this Eagles defense, who's well-rested, healthy, to absolutely dominate this Giants team like they did in Week 14. We've already seen the game plan. You attack the Giants linebackers. They have arguably the worst linebacking core in football. Here comes the Eagles, one of the best run teams, and one of the best teams throwing over the middle. So Hurts, read option, whatever it's going to be. He already talked about it. He didn't want to take hits in that game against the Giants the other week just because he didn't want to take unnecessary hits on that body. He doesn't care this week. I mean, if you've seen his hype up video, he said he's not some hungry dog this week. He's a starving dog. He is starving for a championship. So I love the Eagles, love the hype. It's a night game too, so that crowd's going to be rowdy. I just love the public is so heavy on the Giants here. I think we're getting a great number.
All right, come for the picks, get the Art of War addendum as well. Here's a stat also that I stole from Stuckey. Shout out Stuckey. You can't get there before me, Raybon. Number 1 seeds the last 20 years, 13, 25, and 1 against the spread in this round. So we clearly like the Jags, but Simon has taken a stand on the number 1 seed Eagles. Raybon, you believe the Giants are a team of destiny. What is your ugly pick for this game?
We're going to get real ugly here. We're going to go with Quez Watkins under 19.5 receiving yards. Watkins was a totally different receiver with Dallas Goedert out of the lineup. And of course, Goedert is back now. Watkins had 24 targets in the 5 games that Dallas Goedert missed. He had 25 targets in his other 12 games with Goedert healthy and on the field. His median in those 12 games was 7 receiving yards, and he had 19 or fewer 75% of the time. The Giant defense, as bad as they've been most of the year, letting teams kind of go up and down the field, 6th in DVOA against non-number 1 and number 2 receivers. And I think part of that is just you can usually get your matchups and you don't have to go to your 4th or 5th read against these Giants. So I have this median projected around 15 here for Watkins, who runs a lot more low percentage routes with all of the Eagles pass catchers healthy. So going Watkins under 19.5.
This is a really tricky one. This has been the hardest game to make picks on the entire week because the Giants are so in the head of bettors right now. All their 1-score games, covering at a prodigious clip what they did against the Vikings. Daniel Jones looking like a Pro Bowler and an All-Pro. And then this whole week, I got Simon in my ear talking about the Eagles, talking about how this game should be 10. I got people telling me that the Eagles haven't lost with Jalen Hurts and Jordan Davis, the defensive lineman, playing in the same game, that this is a team that is undervalued. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make this easy for the fans. We're going with Daniel Bellinger under his receiving yards, because that is one where I feel like Koerner has nailed it. He's also thread a needle on like the one that is going to be the least amount of tension for me. So give me Daniel Bellinger under his receiving yards. Thank you, Sean Koerner. Darren, tell us everything.
Okay, Giants plus 7.5. They are actually getting 62% of the bets and 68% of the money. As Sun Tzu says, he will win who knows when to fight and when not to fight. 48 is the total. 65% of the bets and 69% of the money is on the over. And reminding you that Convince Me is brought to you by Bet365, the world's favorite sportsbook brand. Sign up with promo code ACTION and get Bet365's exclusive sign-up offer. New Jersey, Colorado, Ohio. Bet $1 on any game. Get $200 in bet credits. Chad?
All right, listen, we'll take the Art of War all day. Let's play.
I'll give it to you too. I'll keep quoting. It'll be very annoying.
Keep coming back to us. Thank you. All right, we got the Bengals and the Bills. Obviously, a rematch of a game that was suspended and canceled several weeks ago. Sean Koerner, what do you got for our first best bet there?
Well, I've got another gross one for you. I'm going with Samaje Perine over 12.5 receiving yards. And there's actually a few reasons why I love his upside in this market. And the first is he's seen a significant increase in receiving usage in the second half of the season. His routes run rate nearly doubled in the second half of the season when both he and Mixon were active. And that trend continued last week against the Ravens. He ran route on 51% of Burrow's dropbacks. That was the highest rate of the season for him when Mixon was active as well. So that's reason one. Reason two is Perine typically does see an increase in receiving usage in trailing game scripts. He's averaged 23 receiving yards per game in the 4 Bengals losses this season and only at 11 yards receiving in their 10 wins. And the Bengals are in the midst of a 9-game win streak, but are 5.5-point underdogs here. So we should expect Perine to see a boost as a result. And last but not least, the offensive line issues, with Alex Kappa and Jonah Williams already ruled out. The Bengals offensive line could be a significant issue in this game. Not only could it prevent the Bengals from just establishing the run, but it's going to likely result in Burrow facing more pressure. And when Burrow's under pressure this season, Perine's target share jumps up 10%, which is by far the highest of all Bengals players. It's typically because he's in the game when they do expect Burrow to be under pressure. So this is a spot where I think there's a ton of factors going in Perine's favor. So I'm projecting him closer to 15.5, 16.5 receiving yards here.
Well, look, a lot of us were lucky enough to be together in person last weekend watching the Ravens-Bengals game, including Koerner, me, you, and Raybon. And we were all riding on the Joe Mixon under receptions and rushing yardage total. And even though he had like 30 in the first series, he had one key drop on a third down play and got trucked in pass blocking on a third down play. And you started to see Perine more and more as the game went on in those crucial situations. So I love your theory here. Simon, what do you got?
Chad, we're going this one. Bills minus 5.5. Grab it now if you can. I'm seeing a lot of books now showing 6. We talked all week about this game, Chad. One we loved early in the week. Am I coming on here and being, we already got the minus 3.5. I wouldn't bet this number now. It's moved too much. No, we'd still take the number. It's still under 6, which is a key number. I'd grab the 5.5. I think it's such an important number in this matchup where, can I see this landing on 6? I honestly can. The way the Bengals play, they're never honestly going to be out of this game. They're just a team that Joe Burrow, he will not give up. He will keep coming after it. But to me, the Bills, the big advantage here is what you guys already kind of talked about. We saw what happened with this Bengals offense. As soon as they get down enough offensive linemen, Sure, the pass blocking suffered. It was the run blocking. They could not run the ball at all last week. So to me, that's going to be the Achilles heel for this Bengals team. There's going to be no way of them getting Joe Mixon established in this game, where I do see them playing from behind against a Bills team that's just going to be coming out on fire. Like, they had a bad week last week. We already talked about that, but their expected score was way better than the public realizes. Like, that game against Miami wasn't as close as people really perceive it to be. And on the flip side, I think the public is still thinking of this Cincy team as what they were in the middle of their regular season when they were fully healthy, all things clicking, all things going. It's no surprise they're getting all the tickets on this, and it's the pros that are coming on the Bills. I mean, we've seen it. They dropped all the way to 3.5. Now it's literally at 6 at most books. Like, the books to move a game 2.5 points, that's a huge deal, especially a standalone game. They're moving across key numbers. That means they know that there's going to be pros trying to middle this game. So to me, the fact they've moved it so much, Chad, it's giving me more confidence on this Bills team. It feels like, yes, you got early in the week, you got a great number. I still think you're getting a good number of 5.5. As long as you're getting under 6, to me, that's a good number.
Yeah. So you mentioned expected score from that Bills Dolphins game. I think our crack analytics team led by Sean Koerner, including Nick Giffen and Billy Ward, they had the expected score of this game should have been 39-23, which meant it would have easily covered a spread that got all the way up to 14. But also what's really interesting is the luck rankings this week had Cincinnati as being the team that was luckiest and probably should have lost that game 22-14. So I agree with you, man. Like, the Bills getting them in that dead zone of between 4 and 6 is still going to be a really, really good number. Raybon, please do your best to convince me that your pick is better than Samaje or the Bills.
Yes, I'm going Devin Singletary under 37.5 rushing yards. It is now. And I don't think this pick is better than the other two picks because it's already dropped 8 yards from when, it initially opened. But I have it at 36. So I have about a yard more of value still on this prop, 1.5 yards. But he was out carried by James Cook the last 2 weeks in, 2 of the most important games of the year. Cook got 2 more carries in each of those games. And he's playing more in the Pats game, and he's kind of taken over what the same role Samaje Perine has on the Bengals. And this Cincinnati defense with DJ Reader allowing just 3.7 yards per carry to opposing running backs compared to over 4 when he's out. And the Bills called a design run just 33% of the time over the last 2 weeks. So, Singletary competing with James Cook, who's overtaken him, and Josh Allen. And you're only talking about, probably a third of the plays are going to be design runs. So there's just a lot going on in this Bills backfield. And that's not even mentioning that Nyheim Hines also started playing snaps in this backfield as well. So a lot of reasons to fade Singletary, but this line is starting to drop to a point where there's no point.
Yeah, I really wanted to love this play because you just said it. I think he's probably third option at best after Cook and Josh Allen in this backfield. So for me, it's really come down to the Bills at probably what is the worst of the number, even though we're saying you can still take it at this number. And Samaje Perine, who I think is probably going to get more and more playing time on third downs in a game script in which the Bengals are probably going to be coming back and in which Joe Burrow is not going to have time to throw the ball downfield. I've kind of made the argument to convince myself that it's going to be Samaje Perine. So let's just go with that. Congratulations, Sean Koerner.
Thanks.
We got one more game to discuss before we get there. Darren Rovell.
A good commander, even though he's out of the playoffs, is benevolent and unconcerned with things. All right. So let's go Bengals. Bills. Bengals plus 5.5. However, during our show at most places, it has now hit plus 6. The Giants pretty much everywhere.
By the way, let me interrupt. And I'm glad I didn't just tell people to go bet the Bills.
Yeah, and the Giants have pretty much everywhere now hit plus 8, as Simon has said, or someone was saying, thought that it would get down to 7. It is going the other way. Even at 5.5, the Bengals were 71% of bets and 59% of the money, 48.5 the total, 80% of the bets, and 75% of the money on the over. Chad.
All right. Listen, it's the last game of the weekend. It's the Cowboys and the Niners, the marquee matchup. It's a throwback to those great 90s rivalry games. The Cowboys just beat up on the Bucs and made Tom Brady look as old as he is. Brock Purdy has been magnificent as the starting quarterback for the Niners, but there's some narratives happening here. Sean Koerner, start us off.
So I was going to give you Ezekiel Elliott, longest rush, under 11.5 yards. That was by far my favorite bet of the playoffs so far, but it's all the way down to 9.5. So I have to pivot to my second favorite bet in this game, and that's Christian McCaffrey, under 37.5 receiving yards. And when you think of McCaffrey, you think of probably the best pass catching back in the game. But, on this Niners team, he has way more competition. When he was on the Panthers, it was just him and DJ Moore, and that was basically their passing attack. So he's only cleared this number in 2 of the last 8 games with the Niners. He's been held to 3 or fewer targets on 4 of the last 6 games. And that was despite Deebo Samuel missing 3 games and Elijah Mitchell missing 5 games over that stretch. So with both players back in the mix, that's only going to eat into his usage even more. Plus, Dallas has generated the highest pressure rate on the season. So I think McCaffrey's going to have to stay in and block a little bit more here. And we saw last week, Brock Purdy was more willing to scramble. I've been saying he has the ability to rush for 20 plus yards a game if he wants to. He has that good of a, rushing ability. So going forward, I think in the playoffs, they're going to let him scramble a little bit more. And that's going to, be at the expense of dump offs to Christian McCaffrey. Plus, Dallas has only allowed 2 running backs to clear this number this season. It just goes to show how high of a number this is. So I'm projecting McCaffrey closer to 33.5 yards here.
All right, Simon, talk to me.
Typical of the NFL, Chad, save the best game for last. What a nice way to end this weekend with this matchup here. And I've been flipping on this game. I started the week really wanting to take this 49ers team, and I've completely flipped to this Dallas team +4. And if you didn't know, Chad, this weekend there's a contest going on in Hawaii called the Eddie. Have you ever heard of the Eddie?
No,
because you're some white guy from Connecticut. So the Eddie is a contest that started in 1984, and it's only happened 10 times. So it's basically the World Cup of surfing right now. And it's happening because you need a perfect surf break in the North Shore of Hawaii. And to me, the reason I'm talking about this is going to be a distraction to Bosa. If you haven't heard, Bosa was trying to fly out for that and was like trying to talk about this, all the reporters this week. My man's already distracted. You know who's not distracted, Chad? Parsons. Our guy Parsons. And I talked all week. I think this is the key factor to this game here because I don't think Purdy has faced a guy who can come off the edge like him. And we've seen these last couple of weeks, they've been getting Purdy outside the pocket. That's really been working for Shanahan because it does feel like these defenses have been figuring him out a little bit, that he does just like to force it in the middle. Like that's where this kid's eyes go. He likes the middle. So Shanahan, to counteract that's been getting the kid outside the pocket. That's what we want. We want him in a race with Parsons to these edges. So to me, looking at this matchup, it's honestly a little surprising that this number went back up to 4 because I just know so much smart money is coming on the Cowboys. But we talk all the time, the playoffs, a lot of the money gets split. So as Darren's been going through this list, I've been realizing I'm pretty much on the same side as every sportsbook needs. This one, I'm kind of with the public here. I just think the Cowboys, sure, they're a little overvalued from last week dominating that Bucs team. But I just think this 49ers team truly has not really played anyone this year, Chad. We talked about it. The only teams they played all year that positive point differential were the Chiefs, who absolutely dominated this 49ers team, and the Seahawks, who were at +9 for the whole season. So they really have not faced high-powered offense, and we've seen them struggle when they did play offenses good to move the ball. The Raiders is one that jumps out on the page. So to me, even if we get down this game, I just can't see the Cowboys laying an egg. Like there's going to be opportunities in that secondary for them to attack. So 4, 3.5, this game to me feels like it's come down to a field goal. We'll take the dog here every time. Like if the Cowboys win, we wouldn't be shocked. But at the same time, this will come down to a field goal. It just feels like that game that's going to be the closest one of this weekend.
Are we scraping the bottom of the barrel if we're talking about the Eddie as a factor in betting on the Dallas Cowboys? Raybon, save me from having to pick the Cowboys or Sean Koerner's second favorite prop of the game.
All right, well, we're going with Dak Prescott over 15.5 rushing yards, and I really do like this one. I have it projected all the way up at 23, so I am still showing significant value on this one. And there's been a lot of buzz, Dak saying he wants to run more, Jerry Jones saying he should run more, but that's all irrelevant. You know why? because it's already happening. Over Dak's last 6 games, he's averaging 22.5 rushing yards, and his median is 21.5 rushing yards. And remember, quarterback rushing, a very sticky metric, very sticky stat. So 6 games is actually a pretty big sample size for quarterback rushing stats. His first 7 games, he scrambled just 2% of the time. He had just under 1.5 design runs per game, but his last 6, he's scrambling 6% of the time. So a 3-fold increase there. And he's getting a whole additional designed run per game. So almost at 2.5 now. So that's that's just bumping up his carry substantially here. And that's not factoring in that, Nick Bosa, is going to be paying attention to the Eddie, and Dallas is going to win this game, and Dak's going to get 3 kneel downs at the end of the game. So you're still going to get over, I think, even if Dak does have some kneel downs, just because of how much more he's scrambling and how that he's getting an additional design run, almost doubling his design runs compared to early in the season. And remember, he was coming off an ankle injury. He wasn't running quite as much, start the year, but he's really kind of picked it up over the down the stretch.
Yeah, you kind of stole my line as usual. Like, how could I not choose Dak Prescott over his rushing yards when I know that Nick Bosa isn't even thinking about getting to the conference title games? He just wants to get on his surfboard and get to Hawaii and challenge the Eddie. So, of course, I'm going with Dak Prescott over his rushing yards. But also, to Raybon's point, and you can see it last week against the Bucs, he was brilliant countering their pass rush by just running. He was not staying in the pocket. He was not trying to force passes. We saw at the end of the year, even though he missed 5 games, he threw interceptions in 7 straight games. He led the league in interceptions, even though he missed all those games. He's getting more comfortable just deciding to pull the ball and get out of the pocket. I love Dak Prescott over his rushing yards. Sun Tzu, what would you like to say?
The quality of decision is like the well-timed swoop of a falcon, which enables it to strike and destroy its victim. Okay.
We just did that.
You did?
Well, we made a very well-timed decision.
Well, I got it. Absolutely. I would also say, before I need to get in on the Eddie, Chad, this was a 30 for 30. The guy's name was like Eddie Acow or something. This is a 30 for 30. So you should have known what the Eddie was. Okay, on to the real stuff. 49ers, 4-point favorite, 62% of the bet, 61% of the money. The number is 46, 74% of the bets, and 71% of the money on the over, meaning that the over is getting the majority of bets and money in all of these games. Now, let's get to our anytime touchdown poll. Who do you like? This is on Twitter for anytime touchdown in Giants Eagles tonight. We have Saquon Barkley is the leader at plus 100. Jalen Hurts, 26% at minus 110. Daniel Jones, 23% at plus 250. And Dallas Goedert, plus 187, 14% of the vote. Chad?
All right. Thank you. We're going to do a quick whip around on anytime touchdowns for the Niners and the Cowboys. Koerner, who is your anytime touchdown for the Niners and the Cowboys?
Just give me Deebo Samuel at any price.
Deebo Samuel, any price. Simon?
Give me Pollard.
Pollard, any price. Raybon?
Let's go with Dak.
Dak.
There you go.
Wow, doubling down on Dak. I love it. Listen, you want more anytime touchdown props? Go watch the Touchdown Show with Nick Giffen and Gilles Gallant. It's coming up right after this. This has been the divisional round edition of Convince Me for Sean Koerner, for Simon Hunter, for Chris Raybon, for Darren Rovell, for our fantastic producers. I'm Chad Millman. Everything we're talking about, all the picks, all the data, all the research available for free in the award-winning Action Network app. Let's throw it to the Touchdown Show.
Thank you, Chad, and the whole Convince Me crew, and welcome to the Touchdown Show on the Action Network, presented by Bet365. I'm Gilles Gallant with the Action Network, joined every week with my man, Dr. Nick Giffen. Nick, it's the divisional round. We've got a great slate of games. Not sure if we can repeat a 6-0 sweep like we had last Sunday, but God damn it, we're going to try.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you nailed your 3 picks. I nailed my 3 picks for the perfect 6-0 sweep on the Sunday touchdown show this past weekend. And that means we made over 14 units combined. So really good job there. We are each going to have 4 anytime touchdown picks on today's show. And for any additional picks we may make sure you're following both Gilles and myself in the Action app.
Yeah, that's a good call, Nick. And also make sure to watch the whole show because we've got not 1, but 2 anytime touchdown boosted parlays from Bet365, one for Saturday games and another one for Sunday games. No gimmicks, just some boosted odds. Also, look out on the Action Network Twitter account for our contest. All you got to do is reply on who you think scores the first touchdown in Jaguars versus Chiefs, and you could win $100 with the correct answer. And now, friendly reminder, the Touchdown Show is presented by Bet365, the world's favorite sportsbook brand. If you sign up with promo code ACTION, you'll get Bet365's exclusive sign-up offer in both New Jersey, Colorado, and now Ohio. Bet $1 on any game, and you get $200. All right, Nick, let's get started. I just want to give out some picks now, and I'm immediately looking at the first game on the slate, looking at Jaguars versus Chiefs. Right now, seeing a spread at Chiefs -9, biggest total of the week, over/under of 52.5. Now, we had some success last week on doing collab picks, where we just both come to the same conclusion, and instead of trying to force it and try to pick different ones, we both decided, you know what? Let's just nail this. And the first guy I think that we're going to collab on this week is got to be Christian Kirk. And we both grabbed it at +190. Now, Kirk, one of the things that he can do very well is attack the slot. He lines up exclusively in the slot in this Jaguars offense, and that has been the key to beating the Chiefs defense this year. They were 31st in the NFL in touchdowns allowed to the slot. Also, just to wide receivers in general, they were pretty bad defending them. They ranked 31st in touchdowns allowed to wide receivers with 20. Now, Kirk, been a great offseason signing by the Jaguars. He led them in nearly every offensive metric. He had the most catches, he had the most yards, he had the most touchdowns, and he also caught 2 touchdowns when they played at Arrowhead earlier this season. Now, Nick, I think I like all the Jag wide receivers in this game, but from a value standpoint, I like Kirk the most based on this matchup.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, Gilles. Like you, my first play, of course, as you mentioned, collab pick is Christian Kirk, also at +190. And let's just look at a really basic stat here. Christian Kirk has scored a touchdown in 7 of the 18 games he has played this year, including the playoffs. And so if we kind of, extrapolated that as his true touchdown rate going forward, that would be odds just under +160. Now, that would be against the average schedule that he's faced so far, but I think there's reason to think that, that's probably too long because I mentioned an average schedule. Kansas City's pass defense, as you mentioned, especially versus the slot, a lot better of a matchup here. Kansas City, per my slot metric, is the 2nd worst versus the slot, and that's when you're taking a geometric mean of yards per route run, yards per game, and touchdown volume. So essentially efficiency, volume, and touchdowns. Kansas City 2nd worst versus the slot. Another thing that really benefits Christian Kirk here, and you'll remember this was very similar with Jerry Jeudy back when Jerry Jeudy had that 3 touchdown game against Kansas City, and he had Russell Wilson and Brett Rippon throwing him the ball. Not exactly world beaters there, especially this season for Russ, but Kansas City plays a lot of man defense. They play man defense at the 8th highest rate in the NFL. And that benefits Kirk because he has more than 1 full yard per route run versus man defenses than versus zone coverage. So another schematic benefit to him here, in addition to a positional benefit. And you mentioned that first game in Arrowhead, 105 yards receiving, 2 touchdowns in Kansas City in week 10. Also, could just be a lot of volume here because Jacksonville is such a big underdog. They could be playing from behind the whole game, maybe like they were versus the LA Chargers last week. But I don't think we'll be seeing any epic 28-point comebacks or something like that 2 weeks in a row. But they should be playing from behind if things go according to script. So a lot of passing volume, a lot of touchdown opportunity.
You almost made me think San Diego again. That was one of the things with that game. We've been falling for that. We've been calling the Commanders, the football team, the Minnesota Twins. We're just having fun. But yeah, some of these teams we get all mixed up. And but that being said, Christian Kirk is definitely not a mix-up. This is actually one of those guys that should be able to exploit this matchup. So that is Nick and I's best bet for Jags versus Chiefs. Now let's move to the nightcap for the Saturday game, looking at the Giants versus the Eagles. Eagles sitting as 7.5-point favorites at home with an over-under of 48. Now, Nick, I cashed on this guy last week, and I want to go back to it because the Giants wide receivers, it's kind of slim pickings, but I think this guy has just emerged as a wide receiver one. We're going with Isaiah Hodgins at plus 275. And Hodgins, 5 touchdowns in his last 6 games on 9 red zone targets. And all of his touchdowns, Nick, have been scored in the red zone, which I find very encouraging because usually you would think the Giants, when they get into the red zone, they're going to be a run-heavy offense. And Daniel Jones tends to roll out looking for, a Hodgins, a Richie James. And Hodgins, he actually scored versus the Eagles when they played last in Week 14. Now, Richie James and both Isaiah Hodgins, most of the starters for the Giants, rather, didn't play in Week 18. Now, as I mentioned, he's kind of emerged as a wide receiver one in this offense after being, claimed off the scrap heap from the Buffalo Bills. As soon as he got there, he's been playing over 85% of the snaps. And the Eagles, I think we can all agree, are a funnel type of defense. They really like to take the outside away from the offenses with Darius Slay and James Bradbury. They could be a little more vulnerable over the middle, especially now Avonte Maddox is out for this game. They allowed 16 touchdowns to wide receivers this season. That was bottom 5 in the NFL. I think if the Giants get inside the 10-yard line, Daniel Jones is going to throw to Hodgins. And he actually scored against the Eagles. That touchdown that he scored was actually on an out route on Darius Slay, which is very encouraging for a touchdown bet for this. So I love Isaiah Hodgins to score a touchdown against the Eagles tonight.
Yeah, there you go. And, remember last week they were playing the Minnesota Vikings, not the Twins. And the Vikings, they play zone defense at one of the highest rates in the NFL, and Hodgins has been much better for zone. Well, Philly certainly leans a little bit towards the zone as well. Not clearly nowhere nearly as strongly as the Vikings lean towards the zone, but that should help Hodgins compared to maybe somebody like Richie James. So definitely like that pick. And Gilles, I'm going to steal a page maybe from your book, because I think you made this bet earlier in the year. Or maybe it was a different quarterback. I can't remember if it was Fields or Hurts, but I'm taking Jalen Hurts, not for 1, but for 2 touchdowns. 2 touchdowns. That's right. And I got that at plus 525. I think you can still find it at plus 500, which is why, again, you want to be sure to follow us in the Action Network app, because the line did move sometime after I did take it yesterday. Again, I'm going to get kind of analytic. I mentioned, I think, geometric mean on my first pick. I'm going to try not to mention, try not to mention Poisson distribution or zero inflated Poisson, but we'll try to simplify things a little bit. So let's go. Hurts has 3 multi-touchdown games in 15 games this year. Long term, that would equate to plus 400 odds on a multi-touchdown game. In his career, he has 8 multi-touchdown games in 34 starts, which would equate to a long-term average of plus 325. Even if we look at all of his games, his 0 touchdown games, his 1 touchdown games, 2+ touchdown games, that becomes 0.765 touchdowns per start. And if you use those distributions I mentioned earlier, depending on the distribution you use, that equates long-term towards around plus 385 to plus 460 fair odds. So the analytics say, we've built up enough of a sample size where Hurts probably at worst should be around plus 460 on this prop. So I would absolutely still bet this at plus 500. And again, these would all come against maybe like the average situation that he would face. But I just like in the Christian Kirk prop, I think we're in a really good spot here because the Giants have a terrible run defense, dead last in rushing DVOA, and the Eagles are number 1 in offensive rushing DVOA. So it's just the perfect situation here. In Week 14, the New York Giants allowed the most expected points added rushing of any game this year, and that was to Philadelphia. So just a great spot here for Hurts and the whole Eagles team to be able to run all over them. And again, this is just too long. Plus 525, plus 500, just too long. It may not happen. I mean, it's not supposed to happen. That's why it's plus 500 is like 1 out of 6 tries to break even. But I certainly think the odds are just too long. Philadelphia coming off a week of rest. They beat the New York Giants by an average of 16 points in the regular season. And that, while it is points, we can even go to expected score, our Action Network proprietary expected score metric. And that was still an 11-point differential per game by expected score. So I think this has the chance to just skew heavily towards the Eagles, giving Jalen Hurts a lot of touchdown opportunity to hopefully hit 2.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we have talked about a lot is how the Giants defense fairly predictable as far as the way that their scheme is. But the one thing that is also very predictable is how Jalen Hurts operates within the 5-yard line. He was 3rd in the NFL in rush attempts inside the 5-yard line, consistently going for it, 4th and 1. So I love this bet. And I think if you can get it over plus 500, you should nail it down ASAP. And it's actually a little bit of foreshadowing as well, because this is actually going to be a little segment here as part of our Bet365 Anytime Touchdown Boosted Parlay that we're going to be having for Saturday. And the 2 players that we are including, one being Jalen Hurts for an anytime touchdown, and we're going to also have Travis Kelce with the Kansas City Chiefs as part of this. So this is now boosted from plus 229 to plus 285. We'll leave the Hurts bit just for a second. Let's talk about Travis Kelce. 12 touchdowns in 15 career playoff games. 5 straight playoff games with a touchdown dating back to last year. Now, all of those were at Arrowhead, where the game will be played today. He also scored versus the Jaguars earlier this season. We've talked about how the Jaguars have actually ranked fairly low DVOA versus tight ends this season. So I think Kelce is in a great spot here. Now, Jalen Hurts just been a red zone machine, 44 red zone carries for a quarterback, 20 inside the 5-yard line, as I just mentioned. Both of those were top 3 in the NFL for any player, not just for quarterbacks. 11 rushing touchdowns this year. That was 2nd in the NFL behind Jamal Williams. And as you mentioned as well, scored versus the Giants in week 14, had over 70 rushing yards and a touchdown. Nick, from a projection odds value and going into the analytics, why did we want these guys for the boosted parlay today?
Yeah, well, obviously, I really like the Jalen Hurts projection value alone, and then you add in Travis Kelce. He was a little bit too short as a single player for an anytime touchdown, but parlaying him with Hurts and then boosting it, that got us from plus 229 to plus 285, and our projection odds are plus 255. So plus 255 up to plus 285 is a nice 30-cent difference to the dollar. So I really think that's good projection value. Another thing that's nice is you don't have to get 2 touchdowns with Jalen Hurts. We just need the 1. So even if we only get a 1 touchdown game, we still have the opportunity to hit it with a boost with Travis Kelce.
Yeah, so if you're tailing Nick's picks and you're tailing the boost as well, if you get Travis Kelce, we get a little bit of a double dip opportunity here in this evening game. So that is the Bet365 Anytime Touchdown Boosted Parlay for the Saturday divisional games. It is Travis Kelce and Jalen Hurts, and we have it boosted from plus 229 to plus 285. So those are Saturday picks. That's the Saturday boost. Let's move over to Sunday now, looking at a matchup that we kind of got robbed of a little bit in week 17. Now, Damar Hamlin is starting to feel better. He may actually be at the game today, or maybe even doing something just to get the fans pumped up. But we're looking at the Bengals versus the Bills. Now, this game is actually being played in Buffalo this time as opposed to Cincinnati. Bills sitting as minus 5.5-point favorites with an over-under of 49.5. Now, Nick, for anybody who's been consistently watching the show, or following me on Twitter, you probably know where I'm going, where my best bet is in this game. And we got to do it, man. I'm taking Dawson
our collab
Knox
from last week. Yeah.
Come on. Yeah. Dawson Knox. And I was able to get him at plus 225. He's still in over plus 200 at a lot of spots. So over plus 200, I guess, is the key thing that I wanted to bring up here, because if you include the playoff games, he's been above plus 200 in 9 games this year, has scored in 6 of them. He's also scored a touchdown now in 5 straight games. As I mentioned, I've cashed on him in back-to-back weeks and 3 of the last 4. The matchup that we didn't get that I did bet was against the Bengals. And Cincy, we both talked about this. Cincy's one of the better teams against slot, like defending the slot. They were only allowed 3 touchdowns to tight ends this year. The encouraging part, though, why I like Knox, regardless of how many touchdowns they've allowed, is the Bengals also were bottom 10 in receptions and yards to the position. So it's not like they're, world beaters when it comes to defending this. And we saw even last week, the Ravens, Tyler Huntley, they were going consistently to Mark Andrews and Josh Oliver. So I think there is opportunity with Knox here. Also, another reason why we love Knox is just how he's performed in the playoffs. 7 playoff games in his career, he has scored 5 touchdowns, 4 in 5 home playoff games. My thing is with Cincy's defense is I think they're just going to have a tough time trying to stop Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis. We saw even last week against the Dolphins where Josh Allen was just airing it out repeatedly to those receivers. So I think that was one of the reasons why maybe not as much attention was given to Knox. And I think we're going to see a little bit more of the same script tonight. So I love Dawson Knox to score a touchdown against the Bengals in the divisional round.
Yeah, I mean, I like it too. I just have 2 other picks that I think presented even more value.
Of course.
So, I couldn't collab with you on Knox this week, even though I would love to.
Look, that's the one thing. I'll hold the flag for us. I'll carry the torch. And if we hit, everybody's celebrating. But so that means then no bets for you from this game, even though you do think there's going to be touchdowns in this game, the value just not lining up for where your projections are. And that's okay. We don't have to force bets every time a game comes along. But let's move now to the nightcap of Sunday then. Cowboys versus 49ers, where I know you have seen a lot more projection value based on your numbers. Now, the Niners sitting as 4-point favorites right now against the Cowboys with an over-under of 46. Surprisingly, 46.5 is the lowest total of the weekend. And Nick, why don't you get us started? Right now, this is one of those bets that I'm really excited to hear about. So what is your best bet in Cowboys 49ers?
Yeah, and like you said, I have a lot of bets I like in this game, but my favorite one from this game is T.Y. Hilton plus 600. I'm putting 3/4 of a unit on this one, and what I really love about T.Y. Hilton is he's been, gaining snaps and routes as he's, become a Cowboy and played a few games, and they've come mostly at the expense of Noah Brown. Now, Hilton did only play 36% of the snaps last week, but that's because the Cowboys got up so big versus Tampa Bay. They went to a lot of 2 tight end personnel in the second half of the game there. Otherwise, I think T.Y. would have seen a lot more involvement. And if they get down versus the 49ers, which, the 49ers are favored, then I think we'll see a lot more T.Y. Hilton. And how do you beat San Francisco through the air? You have to throw it deep. San Francisco is number 1 in defensive pass DVOA to passes under 15 yards, but for passes over 15 yards, San Francisco is only 24th in the NFL versus the deep ball. So a great example was last week with that DK Metcalf touchdown.
That still burns me. It still burns me.
But that was a deep ball touchdown to DK Metcalf, and T.Y. Hilton has the longest average depth of target on the Dallas Cowboys. It is actually over 15 yards this year, and he's always been a deep ball threat throughout his career, even in his younger days with the Colts. The other thing that's nice is T.Y. Hilton will drift in the slot. He's played it in the slot for Dallas over 40% of his snaps, and that's where you get matched up against Jimmy Ward. And as we've talked about on previous Touchdown Show episodes, Jimmy Ward statistically has been one of the worst nickelbacks in the NFL this year. Now, it's also a bit of a small sample size, but T.Y. Hilton has over 4 yards per route run versus zone defense and only less than 1 yard per route run versus man defense. And San Francisco plays the 5th highest rate of zone defense in the NFL. So again, kind of a good schematic fit here for T.Y. Hilton. And, I do say it is a small sample size, but each of the last 3 years, he has been better versus zone than versus man. So that kind of helps build the sample size there. So I'm projecting just under plus 550 as fair value. So plus 600 T.Y. Hilton to catch the deep ball in a trailing game script versus the San Francisco 49ers.
And I love that pick, Nick. And one of the reasons why I love it is it's sneaky. A lot of people are going to be looking at Dalton Schultz after he had so much success against the Bucs last week. Same thing for CeeDee Lamb, maybe even Michael Gallup. They're not really probably looking down the depth chart and looking at the touchdown list to try to find value. They're looking at studs. And T.Y. Hilton, while he is not necessarily Colts T.Y. Hilton, he's still effective. And we've seen even just against the Bucs last week where he was actually very integral for that offense. I'm going to be taking a Cowboy from this game, Nick, and a guy that I love is Dak Prescott, the quarterback. I'm going to be taking him to score another touchdown after last week after we hit that. He had a season high 7 rushes last week against the Buccaneers and scored a touchdown. And he's been a proven playoff rusher. And I've been trying to tell people this is that Dak tends to save his legs for the playoffs. And he has scored now in 4 of 5 career playoff games. One of those games was actually last year at home versus the same 49ers defense, a lot of the same defensive linemen and a lot of the same schemes. So I'm really liking his chances here. And the Niners defense, again, I think they're the best defense in the NFL, but they can be ran on in certain spots. Like one of the surprising things we talked about just a second ago about how DK Metcalf was a shocker. The shocker for me was that rushing touchdown by Kenneth Walker. I thought for sure the Niners were going to lock that up, and he still was able to kind of run around the edge and get there. And that's one of the things is that I think the Niners in certain situations can be run on. And one of the touchdowns I immediately always think of is earlier this year when they hosted the Rams. Matthew Stafford scored a rushing touchdown on this defense. And I think we could say Dak Prescott more athletic than Matthew Stafford. I don't really feel like that's a hot take, but Dak Prescott, I think, will score a touchdown in this game. So I love his odds at plus 700.
Yeah, I can't disagree with you there at all. Plus 700, I think, is quite long for a guy with 4 touchdowns in 5 career playoff games. So I like the pick there, but I'm going to kind of go against Dak, but not from a rushing touchdown standpoint.
The knife to the heart.
Yeah, I'm going to take the San Francisco defense as my last pick for this weekend's game. You can get that at plus 650. And Dak, he's thrown the most interceptions per game in the NFL regular season this year. And now he's going up against the defense that has the most interceptions. So I just think it's kind of that situation where, a quarterback that's been a little bit interception prone, now going up against the defense that's created the most interceptions, there's a very good chance for a pick 6. And that's not even counting any potential fumble recoveries for a touchdown or anything like that. So, Dak, well, he's had an interception returned for a touchdown in 3 of his 13 starts, including the playoffs this year. And that would equate to fair odds of about plus 333. And then San Francisco's defense has touchdowns in 3 of 18 games, which would equate to fair odds of about plus 500. So both of those statistics themselves, whether it's a Dak offense or San Francisco defense, are much less than the plus 650 price that's being offered. Now, Dak did have a good week last week, but Tampa Bay isn't exactly an interception team. No. They only had 10 interceptions in the regular season, which is the 6th fewest in the whole NFL. So it wasn't exactly the toughest matchup there for Dak Prescott. In fact, I bet his no interception. If you follow in the Action app, I bet his no on his interception prop last week. But this week, I think there's a much higher chance of an interception this week for Dak. And again, that doesn't include any potential fumble recoveries. So I just think it's too much of an odds discrepancy. I'm projecting around plus 500 to plus 550. Everywhere else you can get this, it's like plus 400. So getting it at plus 650, I think, is super value. And it's still out there at plus 650. So I would definitely jump on this if you do have that available to you. And just a reminder, this is just defense, not including special teams here. Special teams does not count for a defensive touchdown on this prop. But that's my last pick. I'm going to, unfortunately for you, go against Dak Prescott, but not for his touchdown prop, just for him to help the other team get a touchdown.
No, that's a good point. So the two things that I would say is you made a great point about this is just defense. So if you see Ray McLeod take one back to the house, it's not going to count. It's only for if the defense happens. Now, I will say the scenario that I do see this happening is a pick 6 in their own territory where, the Cowboys are starting maybe at their own 15 and, Dak tries to get aggressive and there it goes. And, my heart sinks already thinking about it. So now the one thing I will say, just why I took the touchdown bet last week and why I'm still thinking it again is, talking with Chris Raybon before the game, and one of the things we talked about was the interception issues with Dak and about how he may not try and force it as much in the red zone if they get into the red zone against the Niners, which is why it's more encouraging for him a rushing touchdown bet. But again, that's easier said than done. This Niners defense causes so much pressure, it might not even be up to him. It could be a tip ball, and there's a pick right there. So
yeah, and one thing I wanted to jump in here, Gilles, is it correlates perfectly. This San Francisco defense touchdown correlates perfectly with my T.Y. Hilton play. If Dallas were to get down big, especially maybe through a game swinging pick six, something like that T.Y. Hilton long bomb. So I'm not opposed to any same game parlays on that T.Y. Hilton San Francisco defense if you want something really long.
Awesome. Yeah. So your two picks from the game, you've got T.Y. Hilton at plus 600. You've got the San Francisco defense at plus 650. And I'm going to be rolling with Dak Prescott at plus 700. So those are our official picks. If we have additional picks for the game, make sure to go to the Action Network app and you'll be able to see every pick that we have for every game. And now it is time for the Sunday edition of the Bet365 Anytime Touchdown Boosted Parlay. And the two players that we have chosen for this is Ja'Marr Chase and Deebo Samuel. So we were getting it at plus 462. Bet365 did us a solid, and they have boosted it up to plus 587, and it will come out tomorrow at 9 a.m. Eastern on the Bet365 app. If you're looking for it, that's why it's not there yet. It'll be official first thing tomorrow morning. Now let's talk about Ja'Marr Chase. One of the things that I love about Ja'Marr, even though when you look at the overall season end stats, you would think, okay, he was 12th in red zone targets, but he missed 5 games, and he led the NFL with 2.1 red zone targets per game. Like Joe Burrow, and we talk about this, Joe Burrow will force it to him repeatedly, and he's the type of guy who will catch it if Burrow keeps doing that. And he had 9 touchdowns during the regular season. He also scored in back-to-back games in both Week 18 against the Ravens and then this playoff game just this past weekend. And we're playing against the Bills secondary, where it's 16 touchdowns to wide receivers this season, a major regression on their defense comparatively to what we saw last season, where they only gave up 6 touchdowns to wide receivers. And as Deebo was actually on our boost last week as part of the Bet365 wildcard weekend touchdown boosted parlay. He scored on a huge pass from Brock Purdy versus the Seahawks. He also scored last year versus the Cowboys defense. And I think the reason why we were looking at Deebo wasn't just the odds, but it's the versatility on the yards after catch, like whether it be the running or even he could just break tackles and make it happen for you. And sometimes you want to bet on guys like that. So Ja'Marr Chase and Deebo Samuel is who we have for the boost. What were you seeing from a projection odds standpoint?
Yeah, I remember, that Deebo touchdown. We were
doing laps around the office.
We were in New York. Yeah, we were in New York for the brand new opening of the Action Network studio. And, we had him as part of the boost. Sean Koerner and I had him as a Bet What Happens
That's
live
right.
Anytime touchdown play. So it was hype. And we're actually showing individual projection value on Deebo and on Ja'Marr Chase individually. So together, we're actually showing value even pre-boost, and the projection odds we have, Gilles, you're going to love this one, plus 420.
Oh,
so
if you got him.
Yep, I had a feeling you were going to say that. So plus 420 is pre-boost projection value. So post-boost projection value, monstrous value. You absolutely have to play this boost when it comes out tomorrow, 9 a.m. over at Bet365.
Absolutely. And the touchdown show, Nick, is presented by Bet365, the world's favorite sportsbook brand. If you sign up with promo code ACTION, you'll get Bet365's exclusive sign-up offer in New Jersey, Colorado, and now Ohio. Bet $1 on any game, and you get $200. So that's all for today. 4 picks from me, 4 picks from Nick, and we've got 2 Bet365 Anytime Touchdown Boosted Parlays. We're going to see you next week for the NFL Conference Championship games with the Action Network Power Hour. And if you missed Convince Me, you can rewatch the show, or you can just download the Action Network app. You can get all of their picks in one place. You can also check out all of our divisional round touchdown bets in the Action Network app. Friendly reminder, you can follow me on Twitter at GDog5000. Make sure to follow Nick as well at RotoDoc. And I want to thank you again for watching the Touchdown Show presented by Bet365. Bon chance.